A father searches through the shadows of his own home, a place that should have been safe, warm, filled with leftover Christmas joy. Instead, he walks into the cold, unfinished basement of his Boulder mansion. And there, in a hidden corner, he finds the lifeless body of his 6-year-old daughter. JonBenét Ramsey, child beauty queen, America's angel, her tiny frame wrapped in a white blanket, a cord twisted around her neck, tape covering her mouth. The horror no parent can ever unsee. Hours earlier, the Ramseys had called police, frantic over a ransom note left on the staircase. A bizarre 3-page message demanding exactly $118,000 for JonBenét's safe return. A note that seemed too detailed, too theatrical, too strange. But now, the ransom note was irrelevant. JonBenét was already gone. What followed was a crime scene like no other, contaminated from the very start, investigators clashing with one another, evidence lost in the chaos. And in the days that followed, America's media stormed Boulder, turning a private family tragedy into a public circus. At first, everyone. But as the weeks dragged on, suspicion narrowed in an uncomfortable direction: the Ramsey family themselves. Was JonBenét killed by a stranger who broke into the house that night, or by someone inside her own home? For nearly 3 decades, this question has haunted America. This isn't just a murder mystery. It's a story of privilege, power, mistakes, and obsession. A story where every clue leads to more questions, and every theory fractures the truth further apart. And tonight, we're reopening the case file, piece by piece. From the Christmas night events, to the ransom note, to the tangled web of suspects and the forensic puzzles that still baffle experts today. Because somewhere in this story lies the truth of what happened to JonBenét Ramsey. A truth that has never been solved. Boulder, Colorado. A city tucked against the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Wealthy, picturesque, often ranked among the most desirable places to live in America. By the mid-1990s, Boulder wasn't just a college town. It was a hub for technology, entrepreneurs, and families seeking safety, prestige, and privilege. And for many, the Ramsey family seemed to embody that dream. JonBenét Ramsey was a successful businessman, the president of Access Graphics, a computer services company that would eventually make him a millionaire many times over. His wife, Patsy, was a former beauty queen herself, crowned Miss West Virginia in 1977. Together, they had 2 children, Burke, their 9-year-old son, and JonBenét, their 6-year-old daughter, whose name was a unique combination of her father's and mother's names, JonBenét and Patsy. JonBenét was not just any child. She was dazzling, bubbly, with blonde curls and a smile that seemed to capture the spotlight. She competed in child beauty pageants, where she wore gowns, sashes, and tiaras that made her look far older than her age. Judges adored her. Audiences couldn't forget her. And for Patsy, the pageants weren't just a hobby. They were a chance to pass on her own legacy of crowns and spotlight. To outsiders, the Ramseys looked picture perfect. They had money. They had status. They had a daughter who sparkled on stage and a son who enjoyed a privileged life. They lived in a sprawling Boulder mansion, a Tudor-style house with more than 7,000 square feet, multiple levels, and a labyrinthine basement that, in hindsight, seemed almost too big, too empty, too shadowy. But beneath the surface, not everything was flawless. Neighbors and friends often noticed Patsy's perfectionism. Every holiday was a grand production: lights, decorations, lavish parties. Christmas 1996 was no exception. The Ramsey home was transformed into a winter wonderland, filled with guests, laughter, and the hum of privilege. Yet, in that same season, Patsy was battling health issues. She had survived ovarian cancer years earlier, but stress and fatigue lingered. Still, to the public eye, the Ramseys radiated success. And JonBenét, dressed in sequins, practicing routines, singing, and smiling, became the centerpiece of that image. But child beauty pageants were, even then, controversial. Critics accused them of exploiting children, of forcing young girls into adult roles, dressing them in makeup, teaching them to perform rather than just play. JonBenét, with her glamorous photos and confident stage presence, became both admired and criticized. For many, she was a symbol of America's obsession with beauty and youth, a cultural pressure too heavy for a 6-year-old to carry. And yet, JonBenét wasn't just a pageant queen. To friends and teachers, she was kind, playful, and full of life. She loved her bike. She loved her dog. She loved Christmas more than anything. And on Christmas Day 1996, she had spent the evening surrounded by family and joy. No one could have predicted that within hours, the dream would shatter. Because by the next morning, that perfect American family would become the center of the most infamous unsolved murder in modern U.S. history. And when the news broke, the contrast was too sharp to ignore. A glamorous child star, a wealthy family, a mansion in one of the safest cities in America, and yet, a brutal crime that didn't fit the setting. Some would see tragedy, others would see secrets, and the world would never stop asking, was the Ramsey family truly perfect? Or was there something darker hiding beneath the glittering surface? Christmas 1996. The Ramsey mansion glittered with decorations, its halls echoing with carols and laughter. For JonBenét, it was a magical evening, presents unwrapped, a late-night snack of pineapple shared, and the warmth of family around her. Neighbors recalled seeing the Ramseys at a Christmas party earlier that evening. Nothing seemed unusual, but by morning, the illusion would shatter. At 5:52 a.m. on December 26th, Patsy Ramsey dialed 911. Her voice, captured on the call, was frantic, almost theatrical. "We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please." She told dispatchers she had found a ransom note on the staircase, demanding $118,000 for JonBenét's safe return. A strange number, not a round figure like 1 million or even $500,000. Instead, the exact amount of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus from his company that year. A detail so specific, it felt personal. The note itself was bizarre. 3 pages long, unusually lengthy for a ransom note. It began with the chilling words, "Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction." It instructed the family not to call the police, not to speak to friends, to wait for instructions, or else JonBenét would be killed. The kidnappers promised to call between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. with further directions. But the call never came. Instead, Boulder police arrived at the mansion. And almost immediately, mistakes were made. Mistakes that would haunt the investigation forever. The crime scene was never truly secured. Friends and family came in and out of the house. Neighbors gathered to comfort Patsy. Victims' advocates, pastors, and others trampled through hallways, touching counters, sitting in chairs, contaminating everything. Officers searched the house, but not thoroughly. For hours, they assumed this was a kidnapping. The ransom note was their guide. The basement, large, maze-like, with multiple rooms, was barely checked. It wasn't until around 1 p.m., more than 7 hours after Patsy's call, that Detective Linda Arndt suggested John Ramsey search the house again. He went to the basement, and in a small windowless room, he found her, JonBenét, wrapped in a white blanket, a cord knotted around her neck, her wrists bound, duct tape over her mouth. John carried her upstairs, placing her body near the Christmas tree, a scene burned into memory. A place where presents had been unwrapped just hours earlier now became the site of horror. From the very start, the ransom note raised more questions than answers. Why would kidnappers leave behind a 3-page essay? Why use phrases like foreign faction, yet spell common words incorrectly while spelling complex words correctly? And the strangest detail, the note was written on paper found inside the Ramsey home, using a pen from Patsy's own notepad. It meant the author of the note had been inside long enough to calmly sit down, find materials, and write out a detailed message, all while risking discovery. Or worse, perhaps the note wasn't written by an intruder at all. The handwriting analysis was inconclusive. Experts disagreed. Some leaned toward Patsy as the possible author. Others dismissed it. To this day, the note remains one of the most controversial pieces of evidence in the entire case. In many child abduction cases, investigators first look outside, strangers, predators, neighbors. But with JonBenét, suspicion almost immediately turned inward. The peculiar ransom amount, the note written on family stationery, the fact that there was no sign of forced entry, and the discovery of the body inside the home. Detective Linda Arndt later admitted that, standing in the Ramsey house that day, she felt unsafe, not from kidnappers, but from someone inside the house itself. She claimed she counted her bullets, convinced that she might need to defend herself. But the Ramseys insisted they were innocent. Patsy, still wearing the same velvet outfit from the night before, collapsed into sobs during interviews. John was stone-faced, almost too composed. Their behavior was scrutinized under a national microscope. Every gesture, every tear, every word. The media frenzy began almost instantly. This wasn't just a murder. It was a mystery set against wealth, beauty, and privilege. A glamorous child in pageants, a ransom note dripping with drama, and a body found under her own home. And in the chaos, a critical question loomed. Was this the work of a cunning intruder who slipped in during the night? Or had the crime been staged, with the ransom note as a cover-up for something far closer to home? The stage was set. A family under suspicion, a ransom note that read like a script, and a nation gripped by a case that would never let go. Because what happened in those dark hours between Christmas night and dawn the next morning would divide experts, police, and the public for decades to come. And the closer investigators looked, the more the picture blurred, until nothing seemed certain anymore. The morning of December 26th should have been a coordinated crime scene operation. Instead, it became a textbook example of investigative failure. From the moment police entered the Ramsey mansion, they treated the case as a kidnapping, not a homicide. Officers allowed friends, neighbors, even church members to come and go freely. People touched counters, sat on couches, made coffee in the kitchen, and roamed through rooms. Critical evidence, fingerprints, fibers, footprints, was erased before it could ever be collected. And then came the body. When John Ramsey lifted JonBenét from the basement, he unknowingly destroyed one of the most crucial crime scenes in American history. He carried her upstairs, removed duct tape from her mouth, and covered her again with a blanket. To him, it was a father's desperate instinct. To investigators, it was catastrophic contamination. Detective Linda Arndt, the only officer left inside the house at one point, later said she felt overwhelmed. The mansion was too large. Too many people were moving through it. Evidence slipped through her hands like sand. The first 24 hours, the golden window of any investigation, were lost. Almost immediately, suspicion began to shift. To police, the ransom note felt staged. The amount was oddly specific. The language, foreign faction, don't try to grow a brain, John, read more like a movie script than a criminal threat. And then there was the handwriting. Analysts spent months poring over samples. The FBI concluded John Ramsey likely did not write the note. But Patsy? Her handwriting shared certain similarities. Yet experts could never declare a definitive match. The ransom note became the smoking gun, except no one could prove who had fired it. Boulder police began to zero in on the Ramseys. But the Ramseys, hiring their own attorneys and media consultants, pushed back. They refused early interviews, citing police hostility. Instead, they appeared on national television, pleading for their daughter's killer to be found. To detectives, this looked like theater. To the public, it looked like grief. And in that gap, suspicion festered. Within days, the story exploded across the nation. Cable news anchors led with JonBenét's smiling pageant photos, a glittering child in tiaras and sequins. Tabloids splashed headlines like "Beauty Queen Murdered" and "Family Secrets in the Basement." It was irresistible to the press. Wealth, glamour, mystery, and horror wrapped into one. The pageant footage in particular became a lightning rod. Night after night, networks aired clips of JonBenét singing, dancing, and strutting on stage. To many viewers, it felt unsettling. A little girl presented like an adult. Overnight, JonBenét became more than a victim. She became a cultural symbol, sparking debates about childhood innocence, parenting, and America's obsession with beauty. But as the public fascination grew, so did speculation. Talk shows debated whether Patsy was a controlling stage mom. Magazines hinted at family dysfunction. Some theories accused Burke, the 9-year-old brother. Others suggested John was covering up a darker secret. And through it all, the Ramseys lived under a microscope. Every smile, every slip of the tongue, every glance was dissected as potential evidence of guilt. Behind the scenes, Boulder police and the district attorney's office were at war. Detectives believed the Ramseys were involved. District Attorney Alex Hunter, however, was more cautious. The evidence was circumstantial, the investigation sloppy. Without a smoking gun, he hesitated to push charges. This division fractured the case from the inside out. Police leaked suspicions to the press. The Ramseys' attorneys fired back. What should have been a united front to find JonBenét's killer became a public feud. Law enforcement versus prosecutors, cops versus parents, everyone versus everyone. And while the adults clashed, the truth slipped further away. Not everyone believed the family was guilty. Some detectives, including veteran Lou Smith, argued fiercely that the evidence pointed elsewhere. Smith highlighted marks on JonBenét's body consistent with a stun gun, a weapon the Ramseys didn't own. He pointed to a broken basement window, suggesting a possible point of entry. And he emphasized DNA evidence found on JonBenét's underwear and beneath her fingernails. DNA that did not match John, Patsy, or Burke Ramsey. To Smith, this was proof. An outsider had entered the home that night. An intruder had killed JonBenét and slipped away unnoticed. But skeptics countered. If an intruder committed the crime, why leave a 3-page ransom note? Why ask for a specific bonus amount no stranger should know? And why kill JonBenet in the house instead of abducting her? Theories swirled. Police grew divided. The public grew obsessed. By early 1997, the case had reached an impasse. No charges, no confessions, no closure. Instead, the Ramseys were left to live as pariahs, accused by half the nation, defended by the other half. Investigators, meanwhile, faced ridicule for bungling one of the most high-profile cases in American history. And at the center of it all, a 6-year-old girl whose life had been cut short in the most brutal, bewildering way imaginable. The investigation had broken down, and in the wreckage, something else began to grow. A cultural obsession that would haunt America for decades. Because this wasn't just a murder anymore. It was a mystery that blurred the line between tragedy and spectacle. And the deeper people looked, the darker it seemed to become. JonBenét Ramsey's murder has spawned more theories than almost any true crime case in modern history. Each one seems to explain everything, until it doesn't. Each suspect looks guilty, until they don't. And that's why, nearly 3 decades later, we're still talking about it. From the beginning, police suspicion centered on John and Patsy Ramsey. The ransom note was their biggest problem. 3 pages long, it seemed unnecessarily elaborate. It asked for exactly $118,000, the same amount as John's Christmas bonus that year. And some of its odd phrases, "Don't try to grow a brain, John," sounded almost theatrical, as if lifted from a Hollywood thriller. Experts examined Patsy's handwriting against the note. The similarities were inconclusive, but the cloud of suspicion never went away. Critics of Patsy pointed to her beauty pageant world, saying she lived through JonBenét, demanding perfection. Could a pageant queen mother have snapped in a moment of rage? And then there was John. Some wondered if he discovered something, or did something, in the basement, then staged a kidnapping to cover it up. But the theory had holes. Why would wealthy, socially prominent parents murder their daughter and then leave a long ransom note inside their own house? Why risk writing pages that could be matched to them? And perhaps most importantly, why involve the police at all? The parents as suspects theory made for explosive headlines. But evidence strong enough to convict? It never came. Burke was only 9 years old at the time, but over the years, whispers turned into full-blown theories. Some claimed Burke might have lashed out at his sister during a fight, perhaps hitting her with a flashlight found in the kitchen. The head wound JonBenét suffered, some argued, was consistent with such an object. The idea went like this. Burke strikes JonBenét in a fit of sibling anger. The parents, realizing what's happened, stage a kidnapping to protect their only surviving child. It was a theory fueled more by imagination than evidence. Forensic experts insisted the injuries were far too severe to have been accidental. And if Burke had done it, why leave behind DNA evidence from an unknown male? Years later, when Burke gave a rare TV interview, his unusual mannerisms and nervous smile reignited speculation. But speculation doesn't solve crimes. Police never treated Burke as a serious suspect, and DNA cleared him. Still, to this day, some corners of the internet keep Burke's name alive in theory circles. Then comes the most haunting possibility, that someone slipped into the Ramsey home that night. Supporters of this theory point to several clues. A broken basement window that John Ramsey admitted had been left unfixed. DNA on JonBenét's underwear and beneath her fingernails that didn't match any family member. Marks on her body that some believe came from a stun gun, a weapon the Ramseys didn't own. Detective Lou Smith, one of the most respected voices in the case, became the intruder theory's strongest advocate. He argued that everything pointed outward, not inward. "If you follow the evidence," he said, "it doesn't lead to the family." But skeptics pushed back. Why would an intruder write a 3-page ransom note inside the house, using pen and paper found in the Ramsey kitchen? Why ask for an oddly specific sum of money? And why kill JonBenét instead of taking her away for ransom? The intruder theory explained the DNA, but it left a trail of other questions unanswered. The real wild card in the JonBenét case has always been DNA. Testing in the late 1990s revealed a male profile under JonBenét's fingernails and in her underwear. This was huge. It didn't belong to John, Patsy, or Burke. And in 2008, then District Attorney Mary Lacey publicly cleared the Ramseys, citing that DNA as proof they weren't involved. But science complicates things. Some experts argue the DNA could be touch DNA, trace skin cells transferred during manufacturing or handling of clothing. If that's true, it might not even belong to the killer. Others counter, no, this is the key. Whoever that unidentified male is, that's JonBenét's killer. Decades later, the DNA has been run through every database imaginable. Still, no match. It's like a ghost lingering in the evidence. A fingerprint without a name. Over the years, investigators and internet sleuths have put forward a cast of characters. Santa Bill, a local man who played Santa Claus at neighborhood parties. He was close to JonBenét, but cleared by DNA. Neighborhood drifter. Some argued a transient or burglar broke in that night, but no evidence tied anyone specific to the house. John Mark Carr, in 2006, a former schoolteacher in Thailand confessed to killing JonBenét. The media exploded until DNA ruled him out and his story collapsed. Each time, the world thought the mystery had cracked open. Each time, it snapped shut again. What makes the JonBenét case so gripping is that the evidence seems to argue with itself. The ransom note screams, inside job. The DNA whispers, intruder. The media points at the parents. Detectives feud over every detail. It's a mystery where every piece fits until you try to fit the next one. And that's why, all these years later, the JonBenét case hasn't just survived, it has thrived. Because it isn't just about finding a killer. It's about the endless possibility of who that killer might be. And that possibility has kept people glued for nearly 30 years. If the morning of December 26, 1996, marked the beginning of the crime, the morning after marked the beginning of something else, a media obsession that would last decades. From the start, JonBenét's story had all the elements of a national fixation. A beautiful child in glittering pageant dresses, a wealthy family in a mansion at Christmas, a brutal crime with no clear suspect. It was a true crime fairy tale, tragic, shocking, irresistible. Tabloids lined grocery store shelves with her face. Cable news networks ran wall-to-wall coverage. Talk shows dissected every scrap of evidence, every word spoken by the Ramseys. Soon, JonBenét was no longer just a victim. She was a symbol. To some, she represented innocence lost. To others, she was proof of America's obsession with beauty and pageantry. And to millions more, she was the mystery they just couldn't turn away from. By the early 2000s, JonBenét had become an industry. Books poured out, police memoirs, investigative deep dives, speculative true crime thrillers. Each claimed to hold the key, and each reignited public debate. Television followed. Networks aired primetime specials, often timed with anniversaries of the crime. Dramatizations cast actors as the Ramseys, recreating the night of the murder in lurid detail. Every new theory, every new exclusive felt like a breakthrough. But time and again, viewers were left with the same unsolved mystery. The case wasn't just news anymore. It was entertainment. As the internet exploded in the late 1990s and 2000s, JonBenét became one of the first major cases to be dissected online. Message boards and forums became digital crime scenes. Amateur sleuths traded theories, posted timelines, and analyzed handwriting samples as if they were detectives. Some swore the ransom note proved Patsy's guilt. Others claimed the DNA proved an intruder. And as social media grew, the speculation multiplied. YouTube channels, podcasts, Reddit threads, all kept JonBenét's story alive. Theories became more elaborate, and sometimes more bizarre. One thing was certain. In the digital age, the case would never be forgotten. For the Ramseys, media obsession was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it kept pressure on authorities to solve the case. On the other, it turned them into tabloid villains. Accusations against them ran so deep that they fought back with lawsuits. They sued tabloids, television networks, and even individual commentators for defamation. Some cases were settled. Others dragged on for years. Burke Ramsey, especially, became a lightning rod. In 2016, after a CBS documentary suggested he may have been involved, Burke filed a $750 million lawsuit against the network. It was eventually settled for an undisclosed amount, but the damage to his reputation lingered. The Ramseys lived not just with grief, but with the weight of suspicion and media spectacle. Every few years, the case came roaring back. On the 10th anniversary, the 20th, the 25th, each time, new documentaries promised shocking revelations. Each time, they drew millions of viewers. And yet, nothing changed. No new arrests. No definitive answers. Just the same unsolved puzzle, repackaged for a new generation. For networks, it was ratings gold. For the public, it was déjà vu. The media spotlight never dimmed for the Ramseys. Patsy, battling ovarian cancer, passed away in 2006 without ever seeing the case solved. John remarried and tried to move forward, though interviews show a man still haunted by that December morning. Burke, now an adult, rarely speaks publicly. But whenever he does, cameras return, questions resurface, and the cycle begins again. The family became as much a part of the story as JonBenét herself. And in some ways, they were trapped in it. Most true crime stories fade after the headlines. JonBenét's didn't. Why? Because the mystery had no closure. Because every theory seemed both possible and impossible. Because the images of JonBenét, a child made up like a queen, then found murdered in her home, were unforgettable. The case became more than evidence. It became a mirror, reflecting America's fascination with crime, beauty, and tragedy. And as the years rolled on, JonBenét's story transformed from a single case into a cultural myth. Every anniversary, every new documentary, every debate circles back to the same question. Who killed JonBenét Ramsey? It is the question that refuses to die. The one that has haunted Boulder, Colorado, for nearly 3 decades. The one that has kept millions of viewers leaning forward, desperate for an answer that never comes. And maybe that's why the case still grips us. Because the mystery remains unsolved. Because the story isn't finished. Because somewhere, out there, someone knows the truth. Nearly 3 decades have passed since JonBenét Ramsey was murdered in her Boulder home. Yet the case still casts a long shadow over American true crime. What keeps it alive isn't just the horror of the crime. It's the sense that the answer is right there, locked inside DNA, hidden in old files, buried under decades of mistakes. In the years since 1996, forensic science has leapt forward. Back then, DNA testing was limited, slow, and often unreliable with small samples. Today, even a few cells can be enough to build a genetic profile. Investigators have retested JonBenét's evidence multiple times. Each round confirmed the presence of DNA from an unknown male, not John, Patsy, or Burke Ramsey. And now, with the rise of genetic genealogy, the same technology that caught the Golden State Killer, some believe we are closer than ever to finding JonBenét's killer. By uploading DNA markers to public genealogy databases, detectives can build family trees that lead back to suspects. It's a painstaking process, but it has solved dozens of cold cases once thought impossible. So far, though, JonBenét's case hasn't cracked. Some experts say the DNA is too degraded, too partial. Others insist it's only a matter of time. The ghost in the evidence is still waiting. Over the years, the case has passed through many hands. Boulder police, district attorneys, private investigators, even the FBI have all tried to unravel it. In recent years, JonBenét's half-brother, John Andrew Ramsey, has pushed hard for fresh investigations. He's publicly criticized Boulder police for refusing to use outside experts and more advanced DNA labs. Every day this case sits, evidence degrades, he said. The technology exists. Why aren't we using it? Boulder police insist the case is still active, that they continue to test DNA and follow leads. But critics argue it's more politics than progress. The mistakes of the early investigation, they say, left the department reluctant to hand over control or admit failure. The stalemate leaves JonBenét's case in limbo, too famous to close, too fractured to solve. Despite the lack of progress, the case resurfaces like clockwork. In 2006, John Mark Carr's false confession briefly reignited headlines. In 2016, the 20th anniversary sparked a wave of documentaries, each promising shocking new evidence. In 2021, DNA genealogy experts again pushed for access to the case files, arguing they could do what Boulder police had not. Each moment brings hope. Each ends the same way: no answers. John Ramsey, now in his 80s, has lived long enough to see his wife pass away, his reputation dragged through the mud, and his daughter's case turned into spectacle. And yet, he still pushes forward. In recent interviews, he has pleaded with Colorado authorities to release the DNA to outside labs. If they won't solve it, he said, let someone else try. For him, time is running out. The longer the case drags, the less chance there is of justice in his lifetime. The JonBenét Ramsey case has become more than a cold case. It has become the blueprint of modern true crime. A tragic victim, a botched investigation, endless media fascination, DNA as both hope and frustration. It's the story every podcast, every documentary, every YouTube channel eventually returns to. Because it doesn't just ask who did it. It asks whether America can ever find the truth in a case consumed by chaos. And so, decades later, the questions remain. Was the ransom note the careless work of grieving parents, or the chilling message of a stranger? Was the DNA a clue to the killer, or just a red herring from contaminated evidence? Was JonBenét's death the result of a family secret, or the perfect crime committed by an outsider who was never caught? Each answer seems possible. Each answer seems incomplete. That's the spell of the JonBenét Ramsey case. JonBenét was only 6 years old. She should have grown up, left the pageant stage behind, and lived a full life. Instead, her story became frozen in time, replayed again and again, while the truth stayed just out of reach. The legacy of the case isn't just mystery. It's also a warning. A warning about what happens when evidence is mishandled, when investigators fight, when media frenzy consumes justice. It's a reminder that the first 24 hours can decide everything. And it's proof that once a story like this grips the world, it never lets go. As of today, JonBenét's killer has never been named. The files remain open. The DNA remains unsolved. The debate remains alive. Somewhere, the answer exists. In a lab, in a forgotten lead, in a person who has stayed silent for nearly 30 years. The question isn't whether JonBenét Ramsey's case will be solved. The question is, when? And until that day comes, her story will remain what it has always been, the most haunting unsolved mystery in America. Almost 30 years have passed since JonBenét Ramsey's laughter echoed through her family's Colorado home. Almost 30 years since the morning her parents dialed 911, and the world was introduced to a tragedy that has never been resolved. We've seen false confessions, shattered reputations, and investigators pointing fingers at each other while the truth slipped further away. We've seen DNA evidence hold the promise of answers, only to end in frustration. And through it all, one thing has remained unchanged. JonBenét's killer is still out there. Most true crime cases either fade away or are finally solved. This one refuses to do either. Every new technology brings fresh hope. Every anniversary brings new speculation. Every headline pulls us back into the basement of that Boulder home, searching for something the investigators missed. It's the case that refuses to close. The story that refuses to die. Maybe it's because JonBenét was so young, a child who never had the chance to grow up. Maybe it's because the crime scene was so chaotic, leaving behind just enough evidence to haunt us, but never enough to convict. Or maybe it's because this case reflects something larger. A broken system, a family torn apart, a media machine that fed on tragedy until it became entertainment. JonBenét's case isn't just about who killed her. It's about whether truth can survive in a world of mistakes, lies, and endless speculation. Was the ransom note a cover-up, or the mark of a stranger? Was the DNA the killer's fingerprint, or just contamination that misled investigators? Was JonBenét's death an accident, a crime of passion, or the work of someone who planned every detail? We may not have the answers today, but the case forces us to ask the questions again and again. And until those questions are answered, the story will always remain open. The tragedy of JonBenét Ramsey no longer belongs just to her family, or to Boulder, or even to the investigators. It belongs to history. It belongs to every true crime follower, every armchair detective, every journalist, every YouTube viewer who still feels that chill when they hear her name. It belongs to us, because the unanswered truth is still waiting. As the years stretch on, JonBenét risks becoming just another case file, another cold case number collecting dust. But she wasn't just a case. She was a child. And until justice is done, her story matters. So maybe the most important thing we can do is not to let her be forgotten, not to let her story fade, not to stop asking questions. Because somewhere, someone knows the truth. The JonBenét Ramsey case is more than a mystery. It's a mirror, reflecting how fragile justice can be when mistakes are made, and how powerful a story can be when the truth is never found. And the question lingers, will we ever know what really happened that night in Boulder? Or will JonBenét's ghost haunt us forever? If you want to hear more stories like this, the dark files, the mysteries that refuse to die, make sure you subscribe and join us as we uncover the secrets history tried to bury. Because this is only the beginning. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to TRENDIFY channel for more amazing contents. Your engagement means everything to us.